Do you ever feel like you're struggling to keep your RPG sessions engaging or that your players aren't biting on those quest hooks? Well, in today's Wizards of Eem, we're going to talk about the 4 elements that make any adventure unforgettable. Okay. Thanks for joining us for today's Wizards of Eem podcast. We're going to be talking about quest hooks. But before we get started, please like, subscribe, and ding, ding, ring that bell. You're a radio DJ suddenly. Thanks for joining the Wizards of Eem podcast. Before we get started talking about quest hooks, please like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps out the channel and gets the word out there about the Land of Eem. So without any further ado, here are the components that make every adventure unforgettable.
First, you want to have really compelling problems. Every adventure should start with a clear, engaging conflict that the players will be interested in.
These can be a wide gamut of problems and conflict. It could be that a mayor was kidnapped by a rival. There's a warg that's attacking a village. Maybe there's a treasure hoard that's been discovered and the wrong people are on their way to grab it. Some kind of conflict or problem that immediately gets the players involved, realizing that if they don't do something, it could have a bad or negative impact on the people around them.
Rumors and NPCs are always the best way to seed these into the game and relay all these quests to your players. One of the biggest things, though, when you're creating these quest hooks and adventures is that you don't want to plan a rigid storyline. 9 times out of 10, players are going to diverge from any plan that you have. So what you want to do is just create a problem, a conflict in general. And all of the fun is going to be in seeing how your players deal with that, what creative solutions they come up with. And you will have fun playing on the fly and reacting to all of their solutions.
Absolutely. And you mentioned NPCs there, and we've talked about this before. Having the NPC have some sort of personal connection to the conflict or problem also creates engagement with the PCs, because if they begin to develop a relationship with this NPC, they feel more compelled to help solve this problem and go after that conflict.
And having a connection to the PCs themselves, like a direct connection. Let's say you're starting out a campaign, okay, the first quest that you're doing, and the problem, the conflict is directly related to the PC's town and all of the people who live there. I mean, that's just like baked in. You're going to easily have investment.
Absolutely. And if the PCs do ignore the problem, the world should change. Maybe that problem doesn't get solved in some atmospheric element or setting element or something having to do with the NPCs that they're engaging with, or that location has a big shift, and perhaps the problem compounds itself so that the PCs have to engage with the quest in order to solve the greater problem that was created by ignoring it in the first place.
And this is big in sandbox campaigns. We do it all the time in our own actual play where, there are a lot of time pressing problems that crop up and the players can't deal with everything all at once. They have to choose. And the thing that gets ignored becomes a bigger festering problem that they'll have to deal with later. And that's awesome as a GM.
Yeah, and we definitely talk about this when we talk about world building, how using this methodology is a great way to make the world feel alive and fresh and always changing, so that it's not a static, playing map where everything is just, a quest giver with a question mark above their head waiting for you to click on them.
Right. The important thing with that, though, is to not punish your players for, quests that they haven't even encountered yet. Things only really matter when the players are faced with them. Once they learn about something, then it becomes real.
Unless you have this constant shadow game going on in the background where the GM is playing by themselves, watching all these elements unfold, ready to...
They didn't talk to this NPC. They will be punished.
Diving back into the NPC element, because like I was saying, memorable NPCs that are connected to this problem or conflict, connected to that quest hook, add a lot of depth. And so can adversaries.
Yes. Good adversaries are key to any adventure, any quest. And what makes them good is that they have to have clear motivations, secrets, flaws. They have to be well-rounded characters. And their motivation it can be a mystery from the start, but at some point, the player should unravel this mystery and their motivation so they can actually stop it. And it's always great to have your adversaries be reactive to player choices. So the world, like we were saying, feels alive and there are stakes involved. And speaking of stakes, we think a really big thing for NPCs and adversaries especially is, they shouldn't always be trying to kill the PCs. I mean, obviously sometimes that is what happens, like naturally, right?
But often taking the PCs out can actually just be an element of trying to stop the PCs from getting into the adversary's business. Not necessarily, I just want to kill these NPCs because they're the good guy. It's, I need to eliminate these NPCs so that they don't find this thing, stop this thing, rescue this thing, escort this thing, whatever that core element of the PC's action is going to be during the quest.
Right. And we have sort of some loose categories for how to switch up the stakes. So obviously you've got, my adversary wants to harm you. It's a big critter that doesn't really have any grand plans. It just wants to eat the players. Sure. But there are some interesting ways that you can change this up so things are more interesting. Let's say they're up against a noble adversary who's like, maybe he's a tycoon. I mean, he's not going to try to murder you outright. He just wants to humiliate you and like reduce your social standing. Or like James was saying, they just want to prevent you from doing something.
Right. It's all about making the adversary reactive to the PCs.
Like a bandit queen who challenges the PCs to riddles instead of combat. Or
creating a scenario where there's a natural progression to how hostile the adversary actually is. Maybe it starts out with humiliation, prevention, taking a thing, but then the PCs mess up the adversary's plans so much that the adversary decides, okay, now I've got to take him out.
Right, without being an immediate lethal threat to the players, the PCs.
Sure.
So, all right, we've got an interesting problem. We've got interesting adversaries. Now, the third thing is we need an interesting location. A good location sparks curiosity and encourages exploration.
I think of your classic dungeon. Got a 5-room dungeon and you don't know what any of the rooms are. That's a pretty good way to create a sense of mystery,
tension, and just good old fashioned. Here we go. We're going to kill some stuff, bro.
It's also important to use sensory details. This is true for writing stories as well. Sights and smells and sounds. These are something that we incorporate into Land of Eem because it can create a very strong atmosphere with very little work up front. So the PCs can actually maybe even, these can also be incorporated.
One cool thing to do is if you're going through a dungeon, using dungeon as an example, and there are a couple different paths you can go, describing the visual or audio or, other sensories like smells that the PCs perceive down each path so they can make a choice that way instead of just blindly going left or right. So when you're coming up with an interesting location, you should also be thinking about the terrain of the place, what makes it unique. Maybe it's a glowing mushroom cave that distorts sound, or there are different portals that take you to non-linear locations. You have to sort of figure out the puzzle of the place to progress through.
Land of Eem, we call these location aspects because they not only set up atmosphere or create potential puzzles, but they also make the location itself gameable for the PCs when they're dealing with individual conflicts.
Yeah, you can use those aspects to your advantage if you get into a conflict or you're searching the room or whatever. And finally, I think when you're coming up with a location, you want to think about the history of the place and the people that currently inhabit it. So what does that line of history look like? What was it originally? Who built the place and for what purpose? And what happened in the last hundreds of years now that it was left abandoned, and who came into it? And are there factions, and can the players, manipulate the factions in this place? These are all things you can think about that don't really have to be super thorough or super detailed. They can all be in the background.
And similar to how location aspects may be physically providing atmosphere and gameable elements for the PC, having lore or history or a purpose to the location can create a lot of context that can also be brought up forward that may be useful. Perhaps there's a faction, like Ben said, or there are...
Yeah, all these different elements that the players can manipulate to their advantage as they're exploring.
Yes. It makes it dynamic for the players and gives them lots of creative options that they can hold on to and pull those threads and see where it takes everybody.
All right. So, the last but not least, and certainly in the players' minds, is enticing rewards. Players always want a reason to go, like beyond the story ramifications. They want to know how much money they're getting, what items they're going to get. Like, what's the benefit? I mean, this is just the reality of being a PC in role-playing games.
Yeah, and sometimes that benefit can be some sort of favor or
knowledge. Yeah, knowledge, social standing, contacts. Most of the time, you want to throw this up front and be like, all right, if you do this NPC, we'll give you this. But it's also great to have stuff hidden in the environment in these cool, interesting locations that they can discover. And that's only going to make them want to explore more as the campaign goes on.
Right.
So just coming up with that unique loot, magic items with lore, maybe even curses. It's always fun.
Yeah, to punish the PC for choosing to go the quest that you prepared. No, but Ben's right. Like, rewards can vary. So to wrap up, it's not about preparing the greatest quest, the most in-depth quest in the world. It's about preparing it in a way that hits some elements that are going to make that quest compelling. Now,
as long as you have really strong NPCs, really strong location, and some great rewards, okay, you're going to have a great time.
Oh, guaranteed. You're going to have a heck of a time. Lord knows we do. You know what I mean? But to make things great is not a huge challenge. It's just, what are the things that compel people? So making that great adventure hook just means that there has to be some stakes to it. And making that great NPC or adversary means that there have to be personal motivations behind it.
Right. And above all, be open to letting the players surprise you when you're playing. Like we said, it's not about keeping the players on track onto this, grand plan that you devised. It's about presenting conflicts and problems that they can overcome with their creative ingenuity. And if they don't encounter something that you did plan, you can always reuse it later.
Yep. Always, because it's not about them following the story that you put forth, because ultimately they will still conclude the objective of that quest, right? It's, they're still going
unless they're just killed, TPK.
That's true. But how they get to that conclusion will always be different. Anyway, that's all we have for you today. Thank you for listening to the Wizards of Eem podcast. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. It all helps out. And of course, huge thanks to everybody on our Patreon. If you want to check out Land of Eem, visit landofeem.com and you can sign up for our newsletter to get the free quick start guide. You can also buy the game now. It is finally available for retail, and we could not be more thrilled by the response. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.